So you got these free resources through the universities, but let's get to funding, and let's get to what you just mentioned, which is selling exclusively through, direct to consumer through your own website. Talk to us about that. Okay, so funding. Well, we went on Kickstarter, and this has kind of been our approach since the beginning, where there are a million people in the lingerie space. How do we stand out? How do we do things to get some attention? Well, we show up in places where you least expect us. We showed up in Kickstarter, a place where you find video games and, again, more tech startups that are looking to promote their products, not exactly lingerie. So we showed up in Kickstarter to really also, not only for funding purposes, but also to kind of litmus test the market. Because on Kickstarter is a very well-educated professional group of women and men that are interested in the product and that have approached us during the campaign and gave us excellent feedback. We had people testing our products just from exposure on Kickstarter. Had so much media exposure, just again, because we showed up in a place we were least expected. And that's why we also made Boston part of our brand. We are Luxy Boston. We're not Luxy Paris or New York, where you typically would see a fashion house coming out of. We're Luxy Boston because it's surprising. You don't think fashion and glamour when you think about Boston, but generally I'd like to think, maybe this is just my bias, people have a good impression of Boston, especially their excellent baseball team. It's kind of, I grew up on the west coast of Canada, and when I used to say where I was from, people just had sort of had visions of tie-dye and Birkenstock. So I get the not from the most fashionable place, and thinking about this. So you were using a crowdfunding platform. You're using it for funding in the way of pre-orders, and
correct.
And you're doing. What, 4 or 5 years ago at this point, when actually a lot of people weren't using those sites
correct.
For that.
Correct. So it wasn't as the idea of crowdfunding, that was all brand new at the time. And I remember my family members saying, "What is this Kickstart? What are you kickstarting?" And and so it was an interesting space, but I think it was an excellent timing because the people that were on it were kind of on their finger was on the pulse of the latest trends, of the latest movements in technology, and that included the softer technologies like material sciences. Yeah. And again, being on Kickstarter, we also stuck out like a sore thumb, not to put it negatively, I guess.
Like I said, sometimes being the only one in the room has its advantages.
Completely. We received phone calls. That's how CNBC found us. That's how Forbes found us. We just show up in places where we're least expected. That's the way we stand out. That's the way we used our small, teeny tiny size to our advantage. We're nimble. We can move into these spaces quickly, and it makes people pause. Yeah. Like, oh, well, what are they doing in Boston? Yeah. That's not a rocket ship.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting. I think there's an element, and you've hit this sort of the right place, right time. I don't know about you. I don't know, DC, Marty, how you feel like this. Sometimes now getting endless emails for crowdfunding or donations that are collected through some of these sites. It's like it's fatigue, just a lot of fatigue because you're hit with so much of it now. And just thinking when you sort of saw, hey, there's a possibility here, and people aren't using this way, but I can. There's that kind of that first mover advantage.
Correct, completely. Right now there are a lot of seed organizations out there. So I think a lot of this right now is more popular. Perhaps if I started Luxy today, I wonder if I would have gone on Kickstarter, only because there are so many different options today. Yep. But it's difficult. The world changes so quickly. Everything moves at such a fast pace that we're constantly recalibrating our message and our approach, our funding approach, our sourcing approach, because there's just so much information out there. And even so, no matter what we do, we have to figure out a way to stand out, but at the same time, stay nimble.